Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I'm Tina Jha, you're watching Perspective. So India is getting out of the vicious cycle of corruption, scams, nepotism, terrorist organizations spreading across the country and regional discrimination in which it was trapped in before 2014. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said this on Monday as his government marked 8 years in power. Speaking at an event where he released benefits under the PM Cares for Children scheme, the Prime Minister asserted that his government's 8 years were dedicated to the welfare of the people, especially the poor. He expressed happiness that when his government is completing its 8 years, the confidence of the country and the self-confidence of its people is unprecedented. He also said the heights that India has achieved in the last 8 years, no one could have imagined earlier. The world today is looking towards the country with new hope and faith. So what significant transformations have been brought about by the Narendra Modi-led BJP government over the last 8 years? How have the Prime Minister and his policies enabled India? At the same time, what are the shortcomings that remain and require focus in the 2 years that the government has before the next general elections? These are some aspects that we will talk about on the program today with distinguished panelists who are joining us virtually on the program. I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Abhishek Singh, CEO, govt, Government of India. Also joining us virtually is Professor Arvind Mohan, Department of Economics, University of Lucknow, and Mr. Shekhar Iyer, he's a senior journalist. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on the program today. Mr. Singh, let me begin the program today with you. So 8 years of what the BJP is describing as its Vikas Yatra. How do you look back at the last 8 years and what, according to you, has been the most significant transformation of the BJP-led NDA government with Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the helm?
If we look at the last 8 years, one key remarkable feature that emerges out is the digital transformation that we have seen in almost all sectors. Today, we are one of the world's largest countries. We have one of the world's largest digital identity platform in the form of Aadhaar, which has become the foundation of all our digital transformation projects. With 1.33 billion Aadhaar numbers issued, it's become the fulcrum for ensuring financial inclusion by allowing Jan Dhan accounts to people. We have been able to do direct benefit transfers to people for various schemes, which ensures that the money that reaches to the people at the bottom of the pyramid, there are no leakages there. Absolutely. When we look at digital payments, the UPI revolution that has come in the last year, we had more than $1 trillion worth of digital payments within India. The world's 40% of digital payments, the entire volume happens within India. If you look at projects like DigiLocker, which allows for seamless exchange of documents, don't think there is any other country with such a digital footprint in there. If you look at healthcare, the vaccination platform that India has built, even the developed countries do not have such a robust system in which people can book vaccination appointments and download vaccination certificates and keep track of that. If we look at education, if we look at healthcare, if we look at agriculture, in every sector, digital transformation projects are ensuring that citizens get better access to services, where we are able to reach out to more people, efficiency comes in, transparency comes in, corruption goes down, and delivery of schemes becomes much more people-centric. So this has been one single biggest achievement of Digital India, which has helped the government reach closer to the citizens in the last 8 years.
Mr. Iyer, coming to you, the Prime Minister has also dedicated the last 8 years of his government service to the people of India, especially the poor and the marginalized. What, according to you, have been some of the efforts, some of the schemes, some of the interventions of the government in the last 8 years, which have made the Prime Minister the champion of the poor and also helped the government bridge the gap between the haves and the have-nots?
Well, I think there are at least 16 schemes, I would say, involving about 9 departments or ministries, which have completely transformed the way the social sector development is taking place in terms of how welfare programs are organized, how the beneficiaries are targeted, and how, to a great extent, irregularities have been checked. This is very, very unique because we have seen in the previous situations how huge sums of money were sanctioned at the Delhi level, and by the time they reached at the ground level, we know what was happening. But for the first time, we are seeing, you take any scheme, because of the digitization that we just talked about, the things have improved such that to a great extent, the money is straight going into the bank accounts. And if you look at the manner in which this was achieved, stage by stage, first you had the Jan Dhan Yojana, and followed by that, all other schemes were rolled out. I mean, this is a very good case where we did not put the cart before the horse, because what has previously happened is, a lot of these schemes were, were in one form or the other. But in terms of delivery, I think this is the biggest achievement of any government, I would say, in the last 8 years is this, that your delivery mechanism has become very, very efficient if you look at what we have seen in the years before. So whether you take Kisan Samman Nidhi, whether you take Ujjwala Yojana, or now that you are starting the Poshan Abhiyan or Vandana Yojana, or even Swachh Bharat Mission, look at the kind of technology is involved in all this. And in terms of, environment friendly measures, sewage treatment, and overall the awareness campaign. Similarly, come to another very big scheme, which I would say is the Jal Jeevan Mission, Har Nal Pe Jal and Har Ghar Mein Jal. These are not empty slogans, these are not just eye-catching political rhetoric, but rather these are something which has brought to light some of the grave injustice that we have done in terms of social, disparities that are being straightaway addressed, and it's happening on a war footing. This is, I think, a very, very important sea change to the way we are conducting. Similarly, you take the Ayushman Bharat, the kind of insurance support, and also along with the quantum leap in trying to develop health infrastructure and in trying to bring about, multidisciplinary or multi-speciality hospitals that are coming up at the district level. I think this is a very big thing. You have an insurance cover on one side. At the same time, you are taking steps, learning hard lessons from the COVID and its fallout, the need to improve and upgrade the health infrastructure. I think this is also a very big thing that's happening. And also look at the way other schemes that have been there. The Atmanirbhar package itself, the 20 lakh crore. Then you have the Gati Shakti project, which the Prime Minister has been frequently talking about, the need to bring world-class infrastructure. Now, one can go on and on. I think all these schemes, all of them have taken off in some form or the other, which actually is what is making your economy, so promising and so hopeful, though there are tremendous challenges. Let us not be in any kind of, the euphoria that, things are. No, things are, and government itself is saying that, the Prime Minister himself is saying that. But in terms of hope, in terms of the possibilities, I think we are seeing a new era, Tina.
Okay, Professor Mohan, so a lot of these schemes that Mr. Iyer mentioned, the size and scale of all of these schemes have been huge, and managing effective implementation, efficient delivery of services without leakages, do you think that has been the hallmark of the Modi government, which has enabled people to reach closer to the government and without leakages, as both of your panelists have suggested, that checking corruption, all of these scams, which actually prevailed before 2014, is something that we don't hear of, we don't see of more often?
Tina, for sure, increased use of technology has certainly enabled in terms of efficiency, and probably more importantly, it has brought in more transparency. The use of Aadhaar has certainly ensured that the kind of transfers which happen, particularly for the poor, they are gradually becoming more effective and more transparent. But allow me to look at the entire story as an economist. I will want to look at India's needs and India's challenges. One, social security has been an area where nation has huge gap. We don't have adequate social security. One, we have structural challenges, and also the kind of digital transformation, etc., that we are talking. First, let me talk about these two things: social security and structural challenge and economic transformation that this country needs. In terms of social security, we have seen Jal Shakti Yojana. We have seen the Prime Minister Yojana, which I think in these current times, certainly during the COVID times, has been a great enabler. People at least have something to eat, something to survive. Yes. And I will bring in the health aspect also in this. The kind of vaccination program that we have seen is phenomenal. And that is probably one of the reasons which has kept India safer than most of the countries in the world. So as far as social security interventions are concerned, I think this government has done as per the need. They have brought in a response. What I will want to see from here is that many of these programs are non-sustainable. I have for long been talking about a paradigm shift where rather than growth, it has to be people-centric, where social justice, employment generation, poverty elevation, etc., they themselves could be interventions which can transform India, and growth could be a byproduct. So I think what I will be more interested, while as a response, government has done well, we needed it, government responded, and some social security, at least for some time, is available. But for me, these are not very long sustainable programs. I will want to see them getting maybe robed into something which becomes a kind of a paradigm shift in terms of India's growth story. One. Two, as far as India's structural challenge is concerned, India's growth story, India's employment story has been constrained by two major things. One of them has been labor reforms, another one has been land reforms. Labor code that this government brought in, I think, has been just the right intervention which this country needed. GST has been another important area which this country needed. On both these planks, government has done pretty well. As far as the land reforms are concerned, I think still, as far as industrial growth story is concerned, these are things which still, I think, work in progress. And I will want to see more from this government or the next government in the country. More importantly, as far as the structural challenge that India has is probably the biggest structural challenge, even more important than land, maybe labor reform, etc., has been lagging agriculture. It has been languishing, and this has been the story for more than 20, 30 years now, that we have seen enough transition, enough transformation in terms of industrial transformation, service sector transformation. Agriculture has been languishing, and that is creating huge challenges for India. It continues to be one of the major reasons for inflation. It continues to be an engine which is truly to be ignited yet for bringing about poverty elevation and employment. So while what we have done so far, as I already mentioned, and as the co-panelists also mentioned, I think these are something which this country needed, government responded. I will want to see henceforth something more substantial coming from this government, which can be built on the pedestal which we have created as of now. And particularly, unless and until we address India's critical structural challenge of agriculture, I think we will be finding very difficult to overcome challenges of inflation management, poverty elevation, and also employment generation. So for me, second generation reforms, which particularly include rural development, including agriculture, small scale, marginal industry, and human development, health and education, I will want to see a story of India's transformation moving in that direction.
Absolutely. Mr. Iyer, let me take that point to you. So several reforms and government initiatives that we've been talking about that have steered India to its current strength in the last 8 years. But now going forth, this government has 2 years, critical areas which require focus, of which Professor Mohan has spoken about. Do you think in such a short span of time, and particularly when the government had set a target of doubling farmers' income by this very year, of course, we were faced by the pandemic, unprecedented situation, economies worldwide were struggling. That ways our recovery has been faster than anticipated, but the challenge still remains, and these are especially areas in which we have to focus on for growth to be sustainable, as Professor Mohan suggests?
Yes, I fully agree that there are certain areas in which we have to focus on in order to ensure that we continue to remain the world's fastest growing economy. While the pandemic did hit us as well as the whole of the world, but our resilience has helped us in recovering faster than any other country in the world. Today, we are growing at almost 8 to 9%, and the way the investments are being planned and the way the economic policy is being handled, we will be seeing the double-digit growth very soon. And even though we may miss the $5 trillion dream by a year or so, but hopefully by 2026 or 27, we will be able to reach the $5 trillion economy. And while we are focusing on building, strengthening all sectors of the economy, the real story is that how do we ensure the person at the bottom of the pyramid benefits the most?
Yes.
How do we ensure that there is a better distribution of income, which ensures the quality of life, or as Honorable Prime Minister says, ease of living of citizens become better? How do we provide access to markets for farmers? So with technological interventions like e-NAM, wherein farmers can access markets, get the best price for their products, ensure that back-end linkages are built up, that will ensure the farmers benefit. Similarly, small and medium entrepreneurs and industries, we have seen a huge focus of the government in providing them credit loans, whether it's through the PM Mudra schemes and other financial inclusion schemes. When we look at the startups, which have become a new engine of growth in India, we are one of the world's most vibrant startup ecosystems that we see in India. Yeah. We have got more than 70,000 startups which are just registered with DPIIT, and we have like 100 plus unicorns today, and out of which 44 of them became unicorns in 2021, which was the pandemic year. So what we are seeing is that with the digital backbone that has been built up, with the basic building blocks of the India stack, which comprise of the Aadhaar, the UPI, the DigiLocker, the e-consent framework, with that, our tech entrepreneurs are in a position to build more value-added services on top of it and offer it to people and businesses to use them, and that is creating value. And with the increasing availability of data and with the increasing applications of artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies, our startups are building solutions at population scale which will deliver services efficiently not only in India but across the world. So this marks a huge shift in the way we are creating value, the way we are moving up the chain, and ensuring that today's youth looks up at building businesses and creating value and creating employment and contributing to the nation's growth and development. So this is what technology has been playing a big role. And with the right policies coming in, with the right investments coming in, with the whole world looking at India, I am sure that the coming decade, as rightly been described by Prime Minister as India's decade, will be seeing much faster economic growth that will yield benefits to each and everyone.
So to realize India's economic potential, Mr. Singh, and because this decade is being described as India's decade, what are the efforts now in the years to come that we have to collectively engage in?
See, like in the tech projects that are being implemented, like we are aware of the Ayushman Bharat Digital Health Mission, which is revolutionizing the way healthcare is being administered, how the entire health registries and doctor registries and health facilities will allow easy access, affordable access to quality healthcare to each citizen. With the advent of telemedicine and e-pharmacies and building health analytics, we'll be able to reduce the cost of access of healthcare and ensure that people will be able to save a lot of money. And there have been studies which say that the maximum amount of maximum number of people relapse into poverty because of the expenditure that happens on healthcare. So once digital health mission ensures better healthcare, many people will benefit from that. Similar interventions are being done in the field of agriculture, wherein with the application of technology, with the application of precision agriculture, with the help of data-driven support to farmers to reduce their input costs and to help them realize better returns in the market, their incomes will grow up. Of course, the policy interventions with regard to fixing MSP at 1.5 times the input cost, plus providing benefits for irrigation, providing benefits for crop insurance, and support, cash support in the form of PM Kisan are added measures. But with a combination of technology and with a combination of policy issues, I'm sure agriculture sector is also poised for a sustained growth period. And similarly, in education and skilling, we are using a lot of technology for ensuring that most people are able to get quality education at any place within the country. For example, even during the pandemic, the platforms like Swayam and Diksha ensured that quality education was rendered even in rural areas and remote areas. In the field of skilling, similar interventions have been made wherein technology-enabled learning is being imparted and to build in skills with people, which helps them in getting better paying jobs. So overall, whether it's all the social sectors, if you look at the impact the technology is making, that will result in a lot of value. Recently, we also read about the One Nation Digital Commerce platform, which has been launched, which is a game changer when it comes to e-commerce. And the way it has been rolled out, and we will see very many kirana owners and small shopkeepers are getting onboarded on that. And that would create value for almost every player in the entire supply chain. So with these interventions which the government is making, in partnership with industry and startups and entrepreneurs, I'm sure we are poised for a sustained level of growth in the years to come.
Okay. Mr. Iyer, coming to you for your comment, because, what we have been talking about, brings to the fore the fact that technology has been a great enabler in helping the government move forward with the spirit of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vishwas. But now, going forward, because we've spoken about the challenges as well, the pandemic has set us back by a few years. It has, given us a dent in terms of the progress that we were rapidly making. And also, we can't overlook the geopolitical tensions, which are having an impact on our growth as well. It is disrupting the global supply chain. The inflation is at an all-time high. And employment generation in our country remains a huge concern. So, to help, ensure that demographic dividend does not become a bane if we don't act in time, what is the government's biggest challenge and what should it do to actually, realize the full potential of the large number of youth that we have in our country?
Well, Tina, as was mentioned by Professor Arvindji, see, we'll have to look at, what is happening to the bottom of the pyramid. How do you put more money on the people's hands? Because that's the biggest challenge. So we need to go back to examine, should we consider the concepts like universal guaranteed income? And if it is there, how it should be, what should be the format? Should it be on a pilot scale? Should it be on a large scale? How are we going to implement? Because ultimately it comes down to that. You have to ensure some minimum income or minimum cash on hand so that, some kind of sustainability in terms of livelihood is achieved. That's one. Second is we need to go back and look at our farm laws, because these farm laws were considered in the best of interest, but they had to be abandoned for political and other reasons. I think now, and of course, the government has already, it will be setting up committees to have a dialogue with the farmer organizations and look at, because ultimately, when you have more than 60% people depending on the unorganized sector, and particularly on the rural sector, and because I'm looking at with lot of possibilities, the Atmanirbhar package, when it came to the agriculture sector, looking at the development of animal husbandry, fishing, dairy farming, these are areas where the government is willing to spend a lot of money, but we need to also get a lot of entrepreneurship into these areas, which would require development of cold chain. We have seen how the fact that we had Kisan trains running crisscross across the country, how that opened up new markets. So there is a lot to be done in terms of reforming, but that reform has to be done in a very sensitive way, in a very careful way, so that the farmers perceive it as something that is for the benefit, and we need to keep the politics out. But unfortunately, with elections happening frequently in the country, you will have this problem because one, you have the global challenge, you will have some crisis like Ukraine suddenly popping up,
yes,
and which can completely upset your calculations, your expenditure account, your revenue account, and all these things will keep happening. In spite of that, you'll have to look at also on the long term. How are you going to look at these issues? How are you going to, generate that kind of income at the rural level? That is why I said there will be occasions where I think the government, the opposition parties, everyone, who is concerned with the economy of this country will have to look at. Now, you see, we are passing through a very interesting time. On one hand, you see these stories of unicorns. On the other hand, you still have huge unemployment factor. And not only unemployment, you also the unemployability factor. You have people coming out of colleges or institutions who cannot be employed. They need reskilling. This is also a big challenge, because what do you do with the quality of education we are offering? Because this is the time we are debating about the new educational policy. We have to look at the quality of teaching, the standard of teaching, look at the reskilling, of our teachers, because this is also important. New challenges require our focus more on professional training, professional institutes, which will have to be dovetailed with the kind of money the government is now spending on all these sectors. Because the real problem today, I have heard several employers tell me, we have a situation, we have vacancies, but where do we get the right people who are trained to handle those jobs? Whether it is service sector, whether it is very highly specialized area, this is the problem.
Absolutely.
So I think a lot has to be done, and the government is aware of the challenges, because nobody is saying that, we have reached a great level. Yes, we have goals, we have ambitions. Even this, the $5 trillion economy is a goal, the goal toward which we are moving. But it would need big change, attitudinal change, which the Prime Minister often says, because we need to change the way we look at it. Because, like for instance, the unfortunate, the way which the farm laws had to be, finally pulled back. Because it was
when
very
you talk about
unfortunate,
when you
because
talk about
the whole
attitudinal
thing
change,
was
Mr.
conceived
Iyer, some of that has happened, but of course, as you also rightly said, miles to go. Professor Mohan, one final comment from you on, the journey covered so far of this Vikas Yatra that the government has described has been good, has been quite positive in terms of bringing about changes, positive changes in the lives of people, but challenges abound, lots to do. What is the way forward?
Tina, one, the 1970s, when 1% growth happened in the country in GDP, it meant 0.4% growth in employment. First decade of this century, the story has worsened significantly. With 1% growth, we have only 0.01% employment generation. Now it's even worse, meaning we have a story of jobless growth. And this is not the idea of growth that India aspires for. And that is why a paradigm shift is needed. And there are examples across the world, across history, and across present, where with a paradigm shift, focusing on employment and poverty elevation, growth can happen. And that is the growth that this 140 crore people of this country need. One. Two, since 1950s, India's biggest driver of growth has been investment. Now, for some time, we are seeing, say, 2008, we had investment of 37%. Now it's around 26%. So investment is, and given your capital output ratio, the kind of growth that we are looking at becomes difficult. So what we need to do is, see, our investment primarily has been coming from demographic dividend. And demographic dividend, it primarily means that you have to have more working hands and less dependent population. Women population, their participation in workforce is close to around 19 or 20%, which means you have to have directed programs to ensure that increased women participation is there. Yes. If you are able to do that, you can increase your investment, which are otherwise languishing, and there are very difficult circumstances that it can rise. But this is an easy option that we can take it forward. Equally important are other, see, agriculture, there are low hanging fruits. Close to around 250,000 crore worth of agri-produce goes rotten annually. If we are able to plug it, and what is required is logistics lines, adequate warehousing, and cold chains. If we are able to invest in that, it will mean a growth injection of close to around 250,000 crore rupees annually. The finest growth injection possible, finest anti-poverty program possible, finest anti-inflationary program possible. Because if you look at RBI reports, for last 10 years, almost 30% of inflation is accounted for by agri-produce, yes. And that too by 4 commodities, that is vegetables, fruits, pulses, and oilseeds. Now, that is where you have to intervene. So I think the roadmap, as far as the indicators are concerned, the goalposts are concerned, they're very clear. We have to walk the talk. We have to design a growth story. I think
absolutely. So, Professor Mohan, what we have seen so far, and as all three of you have suggested, in the last 8 years, what the government has promised, it has been able to deliver. There are challenges in the wake of domestic, political crisis that we face at times, and of course, the changing geopolitical scenario, because of which the growth at times is, is slower than what we would expect. But as Mr. Iyer said, these are areas which, of course, the government is aware of, and in the times to come, the focus will be on working towards these. That having been said, I'll have to wrap up the discussion. Thank you once again to all three of you for joining us on the program today, sharing your thoughts, your perspective with us and our viewers. Pleasure having you on the show. So that's it from us on this edition of Perspective. Thank you very much to all our viewers as well for your time. See you again, same time tomorrow. Thank you once again.